Hi, my name is Jeff Udick, and I wanted to share some of the experiences that I've been having with schools and districts around the world as we find ourselves in this COVID-19 crisis, and with K-12 education having to move to a distance learning format. I've had experience with going virtual school or using distance learning 3 times in my career, and every time it was similar yet different due to the technology that we had. In 2003, I lived in Saudi Arabia, and due to terrorism in the country, helped my school set up and run a virtual school there as schools were shut down. In 2005, I lived in Shanghai, and I helped to set up and run and train teachers in going virtual school there due to the SARS epidemic. In 2009, I lived in Bangkok and helped to train and facilitate teachers because of flooding that was happening in Bangkok and the H1N1 disease at that time as well. And so over the years, I've had some experience in helping and supporting K-12 education in rethinking what does it mean when we go to virtual learning. Each one of these experiences was drastically different due to the technology that was available at the time. For example, the iPhone was only 3 years old, and the smartphone had just come out in 2010 when I found myself in Bangkok. So here are some lessons that I have learned and some things that are coming out with those schools who have been in this virtual learning situation now for weeks. A lot of our schools in Asia are now 8, 9, and some 10 weeks into virtual learning. And we're getting a lot of lessons learned that I think are critical for others to consider. So first thing that we're learning, number one, you can't just flip the virtual school switch. If you did not require that every teacher in your school have a learning management system, something like Google Classroom or Canvas or Schoology or some system like that, before now, you're too late. In most cases, you will not have time to train both students and staff on how to use a learning management system that'll work for you during this crisis. On the other hand, if teachers were using some kind of learning management system and it was being required that they do so and they were supporting students already in learning this way, you're going to rock this. Number two, we know that digital worksheets do not work. If you're just going to take worksheets and send those home for students to do at home, that is not going to work. They are boring, you frustrate parents, you frustrate students, and in general, it's just not good teaching practice. It's not truly taking advantage of the opportunity we find ourselves in. And number three, in going virtual school, we learned that teachers often give way too much work for students to do at home. Most educators are not trained in online learning, which is different than traditional or a blended learning format. And most teachers find themselves in a fully online learning environment, you must rethink the time you allow students to complete the task. This is the number one takeaway from going virtual school. Both parents and students felt that teachers are giving too much work. So what we're talking about is taking how much work you would have given students in a classroom and breaking it down by 1/3. We only expect students to do about 1/3 of what we expected them to do when they were actually in front of us in the classroom. So here are some of my recommendations for schools. Number one, video, video, video. We live in a time of video. We live in a time of learning through video. So we need to rethink, how are we doing video instructions? How are we giving out assignments via video? How are we expecting students to turn in assignments via video? Video is a very powerful tool that almost everybody has access to. If you have a cell phone, you have a video camera. And so we have to rethink how we're structuring learning around this idea of video. For our earliest students, we might be thinking about something about using Flipgrid. I'm thinking about kindergarten to grade 2 or up to about 7 or 8 years old. We're talking about using an app like Flipgrid from flipgrid.com. Easy app, great use of video in the classroom. If we're maybe teachers of students between the ages of 10 and 12, we're looking at restructuring our day so that we're only basically covering one subject a day. So on Monday might be reading, writing, Tuesday might be math, Wednesday science, Thursday social studies, and Friday maybe free time or PE or get outside time. And again, our goal here is to try and get students to interact with our learning for about 3 hours a day. We are not playing school anymore, and we have to think differently. At the higher level, if we're thinking secondary education, those students between the ages of 12 to 18, we must rethink the day. We must understand that having kids fill out papers is not what taking advantage of this time that we find ourselves in. We must make the day and think about the day differently. So we're looking at only covering 2 subjects a day. You might have language and science and math and social studies. Only 2 subjects a day is showing great results, both for students and for teachers. In the end, we need to keep this simple and not overthink it. We have to understand that learning must be fun and engaging for students, or they're not going to do it. It won't be perfect, but your classroom is rarely perfect in person. So take advantage of this time with your students. Remember that if you are in a virtual school situation, something serious is going on in our lives, in our kids' lives, and we have to remember that we need to support each other first on a relationship level before we expect learning to happen. I hope this helps. I hope you stay safe and you stay healthy.